You are a disgrace. You stole from this family. So we are taking this trash. My father didn't say hello. He didn't ask how my trip was. He just stood in my open doorway, red-faced and sweating, while three strangers hauled my private art collection out in wooden crates. He pointed a shaking finger directly in my face. I am selling every single piece to pay back what you owe your sister. I looked past him. My mother, Patricia, was sitting on my white sofa, holding my sister Vanessa. Vanessa was sobbing into a handkerchief, looking like a fragile, crushed bird. But then she looked up. For a split second, there were no tears. Just a cold, triumphant stare. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I pulled out my phone, took one single photo of my father holding my favorite painting like a trophy, and walked away. Have you ever had family steal from you and call it justice? Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from tonight. I want to know who has my back. I checked into the nearest hotel, a boutique place on King Street that costs $500 a night. I didn't flinch at the price. I'm 32 years old, and as one of the top art appraisers in the South, I know exactly what things are worth. I know the difference between a masterpiece and a cheap forgery. And sitting on the edge of that king-sized bed, staring at the blank television screen, I finally admitted to myself that my family was the biggest forgery of them all. My phone was silent. No apologies. No comeback. Just the digital receipt of my life being dismantled. To understand why my father felt entitled to rob me, you have to understand the math of my family. I was the fixer. My sister, Vanessa, was the golden child. And 48 hours ago, Vanessa had made a very expensive mistake. It started with a notification on my phone. I manage the family's small charitable foundation, a vanity project my parents use to pretend they are still the high society power couple they were 20 years ago. The alert told me $50,000 had been withdrawn. I didn't need to hire a detective. I opened the banking app, and the truth was staring right at me. The withdrawal location wasn't a shelter or a hospital. It was the Emerald Princess Casino. Vanessa has a problem. She loves the lights, the noise, and the rush of betting money she didn't earn. I called my mother immediately. I told her, calmly and clearly, Vanessa emptied the charity account. She gambled it away. I expected anger. I expected my parents to finally hold her accountable. Instead, I got silence. Then, I got the spin. When I got home from London tonight, I found out what Vanessa had done with those 48 hours. She didn't confess. She didn't apologize. She staged a performance. She went to our parents, tears streaming down her face, shaking like a leaf, and told them that I had stolen the money. She told them I was jealous of her upcoming engagement, that I wanted to ruin her reputation, and that she had tried to cover for me but couldn't anymore. And when they pressed her, when they asked for proof, she played her trump card. She threatened to hurt herself. She told them the shame was too much, that she couldn't live with a thief for a sister. That was all it took. My parents didn't look at the bank logs. They didn't call me to ask for my side. They looked at their fragile, beautiful, weeping daughter. And they made a choice. They chose the comfortable lie over the difficult truth. They decided I was the villain because it was easier than admitting their perfect angel was a degenerate gambler. So, the theft of my art wasn't just about paying back the money. It was punishment. Richard and Patricia weren't just liquidating assets. They were exorcising a demon. They genuinely believed they were the heroes of this story, reclaiming stolen wealth from the ungrateful daughter to save the victimized one. I walked to the hotel minibar and poured a glass of water. My hand was steady. That was the funny thing about hitting rock bottom with your family. Once you realize they are incapable of loving you, the fear disappears. They thought they had broken me. They thought I would come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, checkbook in hand. But they forgot what I do for a living. I spot fakes. And I had spotted this one a long time ago. I sat there for a long time, watching the rain streak against the hotel window, thinking about the math. That's what it always comes down to with my family. The math. For a decade, I was the invisible infrastructure of the Henderson family. I paid the premiums on the life insurance policies. I covered the unexpected maintenance costs on the house my parents couldn't actually afford. I paid the retainer for the lawyer every time Vanessa got a DUI or accidentally walked out of a store with a bracelet she didn't pay for. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars keeping their reputation polished and pristine, while they treated me like the help. But tonight, looking at the empty space where my art collection used to be, I realized I had been looking at the equation wrong. I thought if I paid enough, if I fixed enough problems, they would eventually value me. But you can't buy stock in people who are morally bankrupt. And that brings me to Vanessa. You might be wondering how a 30-year-old woman gets away with framing her sister for a felony and having her parents do the dirty work. It's a specific kind of art form. I call it the hidden knife. See, Vanessa never holds the weapon herself. That's too messy. She doesn't scream at me. She doesn't hit me. She cuts herself metaphorically, and sometimes literally, and then she hands the knife to my father. She weeps about how cruel the world is, about how mean I am, about how she just can't catch a break. She creates a vacuum of victimhood that my parents feel compelled to fill with heroism. When they attack me, they don't feel like abusers. They feel like protectors. They feel like they are saving their wounded angel from the cold, heartless sister who cares more about money than family. It is a perfect, self-sustaining loop of toxicity. And tonight, she played her masterpiece. She turned her gambling debt into my crime, and my parents didn't just believe her, they felt righteous stealing my property to fix it. I picked up my phone. The police station was one button away. I could report the theft. I could send the officers to my parents' house right now. They would find the art. They would arrest my father. It would be over. But I didn't press the button, because an arrest is temporary. My father would make bail. He would spin the story. He would tell everyone I was a vindictive daughter who called the cops on her own elderly father over a misunderstanding. Vanessa would cry at the country club, and I would be the villain forever. No. The police were too small. The law was too slow. I needed something absolute. I needed to destroy the one thing they valued more than me, more than the truth, and more than the law. I needed to destroy their greed. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. I stood up and walked to the mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the hurt daughter anymore. She was the art appraiser. She was the woman who could look at a painting and tell you exactly where the brushstrokes lied. My parents wanted to sell my collection? They wanted to turn my life's work into quick cash to save their reputation? Fine. I would let them. In fact, I would help them do it. I would help them sell it for more money than they had ever seen in their lives. And then, I would watch them choke on it. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. It was late, but I knew he would answer. He was the best corporate shark in Charleston. And he owed me a favor. "Hello," I said when the line clicked open. "I need to set up a shell company. Tonight." I checked out of the hotel at 8 a.m. The rain had stopped, leaving the Charleston streets steaming and humid. I didn't go to my apartment. I went straight to a glass-walled office building, overlooking the harbor. My lawyer, a man who charges $600 an hour to be completely invisible, had the paperwork ready on his desk. We didn't use my name. We created a ghost. An LLC with a vague, impressive name like Archipelago Holdings, registered in Delaware, untraceable to me. This was the straw man. This was the entity that was going to buy my parents' stolen dreams. "The funds are secured?" he asked, tapping a pen against the file. "Liquidated my portfolio this morning," I said. "It's all there. $5 million in purchasing power." He looked at me over his glasses. "You know you're buying your own property back at a 4,000% markup, right? Financially, this is suicide." "It's not a purchase, Arthur," I said, signing the bottom line. "It's a hunting license. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm reckless. You're thinking I just let my father steal $5 million worth of legitimate masterpieces, and now I'm risking my own cash to play games. You're worried about the art. Don't be. Here's the secret I didn't tell my father last night. I didn't tell him because he wouldn't have understood it. He sees art as currency. I see it as history. And 6 months ago, when Vanessa started asking too many questions about the insurance values of my collection, I got a bad feeling. A survival instinct. So, I moved them. The real collection, the modernist sketches, the oil paintings, the pieces that are actually worth a fortune are sitting in a climate-controlled vault in Zurich. What Richard and Patricia carried out of my apartment last night. They were decorative reproductions. High-end, hand-painted canvas copies that I bought for staging purposes. They look real to the naked eye. They feel real. But to an expert, or a buyer who demands a certificate of authenticity, they are worth about $200 each. My father was currently sitting on a pile of very expensive wallpaper, convinced he was a millionaire, and I was about to let him sign a legal contract guaranteeing that wallpaper was solid gold. But the trap needed one more thing. It needed the receipt. I opened the family locator app on my phone. They had forgotten to remove me from the circle years ago. I saw Vanessa's icon pulsing. She wasn't at the charity office. She wasn't at home recovering from her trauma. She was at a coffee shop on King Street. I drove there and parked 3 spots down. I didn't get out. I just rolled down my window. Vanessa was sitting on the patio with her fiancé, looking radiant, sunglasses on, laughing. The sound carried perfectly in the morning air. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "It was so easy," Vanessa was saying, her voice loud and bragging. "I just cried a little bit about how mean Celine is, and Mom practically handed me the keys to her apartment. They think she stole the money. Can you believe it? That idiot pays my gambling debt. And I get to be the victim." Her fiancé laughed. "You're dangerous, Ness." "I'm smart," she corrected. Celine builds the wealth. I spend it. That's the natural order of things. I watched the audio waveform dance on my screen, capturing every word. It was a perfect, digital confession. I saved the file and backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. I had the bait, the fake art. I had the trap, the LLC. And now, I had the ammunition. I put the car in drive. Tonight was the gala. Tonight, my father was going to try to sell a lie to the highest bidder. He didn't know the highest bidder was the only person in the room who knew the truth. The Charleston Heritage Gala is the kind of event where people spend $10,000 on a table just to eat rubbery chicken and judge each other's jewelry. Tonight, it was being held in the grand ballroom of the Wentworth Hotel. Crystal chandeliers, towering floral arrangements of white hydrangeas, and enough old money in the room to buy a small country. My parents were the hosts. It was their last stand. They had leveraged every favor and burned every bridge to set this up, billing it as a charity auction of the Henderson family private collection. The proceeds, they claimed, would go to local arts initiatives. In reality, the proceeds were earmarked for the casino debts and the bankruptcy lawyers. I walked in at 8 o'clock. I wasn't wearing the sensible, blend-in clothes my mother always forced me into. I was wearing a black silk gown I bought in Paris after closing my biggest appraisal deal of the year. I walked with my head up. My father spotted me immediately. He was standing near the podium, holding a glass of scotch, looking flushed and victorious. He whispered something to my mother, and they both smirked. He walked over to me. Not to greet me, but to gloat. "I see you came to your senses," Richard said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Here to watch us turn your precious art into something actually useful? Don't make a scene, Celine. Sit in the back and maybe we'll discuss your allowance later." I smiled. It was the first time I had ever smiled at him without fear. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, Dad. I love a good show." He laughed, patting my shoulder with a heavy, dismissive hand. "That's a good girl. Watch and learn how real business is done." He walked away, confident, untouchable. He had no idea he was walking toward a guillotine. I took my seat near the front. The auctioneer, a man with a voice like oiled gravel, took the stage. The first few items went quickly: vintage watches, a vacation package. Then came the main event. "My collection. Lot 42. The auctioneer announced. A curated selection of modernist works, held privately by the Henderson family for decades. The bidding started slow. 200,000. 300,000. My father was beaming. He was already spending the money in his head. Then my lawyer, sitting 2 rows behind me, raised his paddle. 1 million. The room gasped. A murmur went through the crowd. "Who opens with 1 million? 1 million to the gentleman in the gray suit," the auctioneer called. A local developer raised his paddle. 1.2. My lawyer didn't hesitate. 2 million. My father's eyes were wide. He was gripping the podium. He looked at my mother, and I saw the greed wash over them like a fever. They weren't just relieved. They were ecstatic. They were thinking about the new cars, the jewelry, the status. 3 million, my lawyer said. The room went dead silent. $3 million for a collection that, unbeknownst to them, was worth about $600 at a home decor store. The auctioneer looked around. "Do I hear 3.5? My lawyer stood up. He held a phone to his ear, playing the part of the intermediary perfectly. "My client offers $5 million. My mother let out a small squeak. My father looked like he was having a religious experience. "However," my lawyer continued, his voice cutting through the room, "my client requires immediate transfer of ownership, and given the high value, they require a signed, notarized certificate of authenticity and a bill of sale, personally guaranteed by Mr. Richard Henderson's entire estate as collateral against fraud." Tonight, it was an insane demand. No rational person would sign their estate away as collateral for a rushed sale without a lawyer reviewing it. It screamed trap. But my father wasn't rational. He was a narcissist who had just been offered $5 million. He didn't see the risk. He only saw the win. He saw the vindication. He saw himself proving to everyone, and especially to me, that he was the genius business tycoon he always pretended to be. "Agreed," Richard shouted into the microphone, his voice cracking with excitement. "Sold. We accept the terms." The gavel banged. The sound echoed like a gunshot. My father rushed to the side stage where the notary was waiting. I watched him sign the papers. I watched him sign away his house, his retirement, his car, and his freedom, all to sell a lie. He looked up at me as the ink dried, a smug, triumphant grin plastered on his face. He thought he had just won the lottery. I checked my watch. It was time. During the auction, my father seized the microphone and announced that he and my mother were sacrificing their art collection for charity. pointedly shaming me as the daughter who lacked family duty. Applause swelled. Vanessa pretended to cry with gratitude. I stood up, walked straight onto the stage, and ignored my father's protests. At the easel displaying the $3 million centerpiece, I uncapped a red marker and slashed an X across the canvas. Gasps filled the room. Then I peeled back the linen to reveal the truth stamped on the back. Decorative reproduction. Batch 402. Shenzhen. A $200 print. It's fake, I said. And I'm the sole owner of Archipelago Holdings, the LLC that just paid $5 million for these. The silence curdled into horror as everyone realized what that meant. My parents had stolen decor pieces from my wall, auctioned them off as originals, and signed a contract guaranteeing their value, committing fraud against me. I played a recording of Vanessa bragging about manipulating me to pay her debts. Her fiancé dropped her hand. My parents' confidence collapsed in real time. When my father slapped me across the face, the entire ballroom heard it through the mic. Police entered at that exact moment, called the moment the sale closed. Richard Henderson was arrested for fraud and assault. My parents begged. I didn't flinch. They signed their own ruin. Greed, not my trap, destroyed them. My LLC sued for breach and fraud. Their assets were liquidated: house, cars, retirement, everything gone to satisfy a $5 million contract they themselves created. Vanessa was abandoned, broke, and publicly disgraced. I, meanwhile, now live in Paris. My real art hangs safely on my walls. They tried to sell my future for quick money. Instead, they bought the end of their own lives of privilege.